Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Kenny Lammons here, Medicare Millennials, where Ethan and I chronicle our journey to building a successful and long-lasting Medicare book of business. So today we have a little bit of a special guest. Most of the videos I put out are more tutorial, how-to, or just telling you guys what we're doing out there in the field ourselves. But today, I'm fortunate enough to sit with one of the legends in the final expense world, Matt Mungia. He is also the head of the Insurance Squad, or 360 Insurance Group. Strategic partner of mine. Me and Ethan do a lot of business with this guy because he walks the walk and talks the talk too. So excited to pick his brain and see somebody that's been a big producer. They've been the head of an organization with a ton of stud producers. So he really knows the industry inside and out. Excited to learn a little bit from him today. Matt, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, well, hopefully I can bring some value here to the call, Kenny. As always, it's always good chatting with you. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully we can provide some value to others. And one of the things that I like to do is, if you don't mind, is I'll be asking you questions as well. I mean, because you're doing some amazing things on the Medicare side of the space. And I want to make sure that these agents out there are able to learn from you in this time that we have.
For sure, man. We'll make it as interactive as you want. So I had a couple of things off the top of my head, because one of the themes on my channel is I talk a lot about, and with other agents, about why Medicare versus why final expense, or why not both, just that whole dynamic, because we've got so many agents out there that do one or the other. Or maybe they do both, but they're not having tremendous success, like with the symbiotic relationship between the two just yet. So I was fortunate enough, when I got into this business, I was actually told that I was going to be a Medicare agent. Okay. And what turned out was, really, we just went in on Medicare, but the whole name of the game was to sell final expense. So I actually thought I was a Medicare agent. I was in disguise. I was a final expense agent, which I'm thankful for, because I learned how to sell final expense, and I thrive on that even today. Wow. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. When you were in your heyday, your prime as a producer, you were almost exclusively a final expense agent, or am I wrong?
I was. I've been in the business 15 years, so it's been a little curvy path to get to final expense. I don't know how deep you want me to go into that portion, but yeah. Final expense, and I got introduced to Medicare a long time ago, but I never had that person to help me navigate it. I didn't have that person to give me what I needed so I could get the confidence to start Medicare early on, or else I would have. Right. So I kind of started jumping in Medicare maybe about, I think this will be my 4th season now, but just dabbled in it, right? Because I didn't know anything about anything. And so I slowly dipped my foot in. I would learn a little piece here from somewhere, and then I'd learn a little piece here, and I was just adding on just little by little.
Hindsight's 2020, I'm sure now, looking back on it, like, your organization does a ton of Medicare business, and you probably just think, man, my income would have been tremendously higher at this point if all those years you were a little more effective at your Medicare side, right?
Well, yeah, because, it's the same clientele anyway. You're already in front of them, right? It's the same demographic. Medicare Advantage and final expense is pretty much the same demographic. And so I look back at all the money I left on the table, and it kills me. But hey, you live and learn, and you can't go backward. You can learn from it, right? And then change things going forward. That's how you correct it.
Yep, love it. So when you were having some of your best years, or your best months in the field, mostly on final expense, and I believe, like, one of the numbers I've seen out there for you is you've written close to $500,000 on your own pen in 1 year. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So going back to those moments, a lot has changed, just not because it was so long ago, but because of the state of the world right now, with coronavirus and technology advancing, and our demographic kind of starting to adjust to technology, and many factors. But at that, how much different do you see the final expense world in particular versus how you see it today? What's changed to you?
Some of the things that's changed is there's a lot more telesales. I mean, we have a telesales division here now. Whereas if you would have told me that we would have that 5 years ago, I would have told you you're crazy. Facebook leads are a dime a dozen now. Everybody and their mom is doing Facebook leads or knows how to do them, or, this, that, and the other. Whereas that wasn't the case. In fact, to my knowledge, I could be dead wrong on this, but to my knowledge, I was one of the first people to be introduced to final expense Facebook leads. At the time, I could only get 5 a week, so I was doing 45 direct mail and 5 supplement it, 5 Facebook leads. And now this was 5-6 years ago, maybe even longer now, when I started that. So a lot has changed, and now you can get Facebook leads at a real good clip. At that time, I think I was paying $25 per Facebook leads. And this was, like I said, 5-6 years ago. So a lot's changed. E-apps now are big, selling 100%, over the phone with the phone interview, but e-apps and all this stuff has changed. Whereas, it was mainly paper. It's mainly you had to do face-to-face and paper back in the day.
Yeah. It's funny because it wasn't, I've been in the business about 4.5, 5 years now, I guess. And I remember my main carrier for final expense was Transamerica for a long time. And technology's helped a lot for me, but it's also, I miss the days of just like sign here, and I'm good to go on a piece of paper. Didn't matter if I had internet connection out in the boonies, it was just is there some nostalgia there for before had all these telesales carriers and e-apps, or is it for the better for you?
I think for the agents that are coming in, you have to know that kind of stuff. I mean, get involved, try to get away from paper as much as possible at this point. Because once you get comfortable with paper, then you're not going to want to get on the technology side is what I found, so get in early, start learning all these e-apps and all these different ways. I mean, I know a lot of the guys that they quote unquote doing paper, but it's really notability and things like that. Again, it's technology is taking over, and it's, it's more efficient for your business. You can throw a good website together, get some SEO stuff going, and in a couple of years, if you do it right, align yourself with the right person. I mean, you start getting people, clients from your own website, things like that.
So we talk a lot about how the industry is a little bit different and it's changed, hopefully for the better. But do you think that it's still a good time to get into final expense, and that $500,000 on your own pen is still possible? Or is everybody just kind of missed the boat a little bit and can only take us maybe more of a competitive market? What's your thoughts on that, just to a newer agent that aspires to do something like you've done in the past?
Yeah, no, it's definitely possible. It's certainly possible. Doing it the way I did it, with leads and getting in front of a lot of people. You have to be on point. You have to know your stuff. You have to be efficient in the house. You have to know your underwriting quickly. You can't make a lot of mistakes. You can't be in front of Mrs. Jones and, and do a telephone interview that takes 25 minutes with Liberty Bankers, and then they get declined or graded, and then have to do another telephone interview. Well, guess what? You're missing your next appointment. So you have to be on your game. You have to be on top of it. You got to know your stuff. You got to know the most common objections and how to rebut those really quickly in order to move on to the next step of the process. Once you have all that stuff down, then you can hit those numbers, and you got to have enough carriers too. That's the other thing. Some of these agencies, organizations will preach, hey, all you need is 4 carriers. Well, I don't believe that's the truth, because what's going to happen is you walk into Ms. Jones' house and she says, I have AFib and I have COPD, who can take me? Your 4 carriers might not be able to put that person in first aid coverage. Well, then what happens, Kenny? You and I both know that you're going to have to put her on an AIG or a graded plan that could be more expensive with a 2-year wait. Now, Ms. Jones doesn't want that plan. So you've spent the money, the time, the resources to get in front of that person. And you could have gotten her first aid coverage with Foresters, for example, or in that situation, or, there's a couple other carriers we have. Get them first day coverage. Nobody's going to come out and beat your plan, beat your price, so you're safe. And guess what? You just added $1,000 to the book. So, I mean, you have to have a whole arsenal from the carriers to know what you're doing, to the good phone script, good door knock script, good presentation, the whole 9 yards in order to hit those numbers. But yeah, definitely doable.
So I think you bring up a good point just to dive into that a little bit. For one, I do agree with you. And just to point out, in the scenario you're talking, you're spending this money on leads. You're spending the time in a lot of these cases to drive to the appointment and then spend the time in the house. So I think a lot of telesales agents have a little bit different mindset because they know they can get through more people or maybe buy a more inexpensive lead and just go for volume. So they might not have that mindset of like, if I can't cover that person, I guess I'm just on to the next. But if you're still running in the field, you're like, every single appointment is important. It's a gym. I spent a lot of time, money, and effort to get in that house. I don't want to walk out without business if I could have done it by having the carriers. By that same token, I've always been a big believer in like, you got to start with the foundation. So maybe it's only for 3 to 4 months, but you got to learn like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 carriers. Like there's very few and far between an agent that can just snap their fingers and have 10 Medicare supplements, every Medicare Advantage carrier, and every final expense carrier, and hospital indemnity, and not be overwhelmed. Eventually, they need to be taking steps to get there. But I've always been a big believer. You start with a core, and you add, and you add, and you add, and grow. Do you think that? Or?
No. In fact, I had a conference call this morning with the #1 Trinity agent in the country, 3 of the last 4 years. And that's what we talked about on our conference call this morning. We had him on for an hour and 15 minutes. And he says his business really took off after he'd been in the business. He's been with us now 8 years. His business really took off after year 3 when he focused on one carrier. So when I say that, I will say at the same token, your question was can you hit 500,000? The answer is absolutely, but you better have a lot of carriers. When you're starting out, I don't necessarily recommend having 25 carriers. When the year I wrote 505,000 of final expense on my own pen, I wrote about 21 different carriers, but I had a lot of experience. I've been doing this 15 years. At that time, I've been doing it 9 years or 10 years or whatever it was. So yes, focus. Here's my thing. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So you can have 20 carriers in the trunk of your car, right? And have the applications there or the e-apps set up and ready, but focus on a few and know those carriers well. Go in with the intention of, and it gives you confidence too. When you know a carrier inside and out, you have that confidence to sit down with that client and know, all right, I know everything about these 3 carriers, and try to get them in those 3 carriers that you like. And then if it fits outside that, have your cheat sheet that tells you, okay, if this guy's on lupus and, albuterol for chronic asthma or something, then have your cheat sheet that'll tell you, all right, it's going to be this company or this carrier. And if you have to go back out to the car or on your e-app or whatever and pull up that carrier, but it's better to have that carrier. So it's better to have them and not need them.
I agree with you 100%. So there's another aspect to this I wanted to touch on, but before we move on from the agent side, I wanted to kind of ask a question that would help new agents. And first, let me start by saying one of the first things I always tell people when you're looking at an opportunity, if you're looking at getting into final expense or Medicare, the senior market, or you're looking for who do I partner with, who's going to help me. For me, I'm a real big believer in find an organization that has some people that are doing what you want to do, right? So like, it's really important if you say, I want to sell 500,000 in final expense. Well, you better be partnered with somebody that has experience doing that, right? They're not just going to pull out of a hat and know the process to get there. And so that can apply with whatever you're trying to do. So that's just one example. What things would you tell new agents as far as what to look for, right? What to watch out for, how to know who to partner with. And number 2, do they go Medicare or do they go final expense?
Yeah, good question. To that question, go both. I mean, it just depends on how comfortable that agent is, right? So, it just depends. I mean, if they're coming in with no experience, get comfortable. And it depends also, Kenny, on how much savings they have. If they have $20,000 of savings, well, you can go all in straight Medicare and sell final expense here and there. If you're coming in and you need that cash flow, final expense is going to be that cash flow for you. And then you can cross sell Medicare, right? So a lot of that is dependent on how much savings you have really, and what you want to concentrate on. The other thing is aligning yourself with somebody like you mentioned that's been there, done that. There's a lot of good agents out there too that sometimes they haven't yet. It's a different skill set. Coaching is a different skill set, than producing. There's a lot of good producers, but they're not really a good coach, or they're not attentive. They're not answering the phones, like you're real good about answering your phones and answering agents' questions, Kenny. And that's hugely important in what we do, because these agents are brand new. They need to know that they can count on you when they're in a home, they're in the hot seat, and Mrs. Jones is asking them this, that, and the other. Hey, I can call my guy Kenny. He's going to answer every time, and he's going to walk me through this so I can help these clients out, and help the clients out, help myself out, and that's hugely important, is always being there. Having a system also, like I know you have all the training systems to where you can tap your agents into the organization, and they have the scripts that they need that has produced some of the best producers in the country. They have the door knock scripts, the phone scripts, the in-home presentations that have produced some of the best agents in the country. They have all the resources needed, which that was a scary thing for me coming into the Medicare thing, because I didn't have anybody that had all that stuff, and you do, Kenny. I mean, that's a big thing about joining with somebody like you, is that they know they're going to get whatever they need, whether it's conference calls, Zoom meetings, agent chat rooms to answer their questions, or you to call on.
Yeah. No, I agree. Thank you for that shout out. Now, I just one little final point on what you said about there. It's just also like authenticity in that phone call. So it's one thing there's a lot of folks out there, I've been through this personally, that are maybe they're recruiters and they promise the world. And a lot of times all they have is maybe like a folder that has a bunch of old training material in it. And there's nothing wrong with having a great online resource. But you really want to know that when you contact the person you're going to partner with, you can have a genuine conversation, and they're going to listen to what you want to do and try to help you get to where you want to go. They're not just pitching you, hey, don't think too hard about it. If you just join with me, I'll give you this big contract and we have the best training folder in the world. Like, that's not a good, authentic conversation that I would walk away feeling really confident about that partnership. So,
well, the other thing, Kenny, I want to add that we can talk about is a good coach knows what each player on the team needs and doesn't need. Everybody is different. We're all different. I might need something from you, Kenny, that Joe Blow agent over here, he doesn't need that from you. He needs something else from you, and I think a good coach is somebody that recognizes, okay, hey, look, this agent they don't need my help. This guy's producing $250,000 a year. He just calls me because he wants to talk his fishing stories, and I'm there to listen about his fishing stories, and we engage and interact because I tell him what a wimp I am. I don't like putting stuff on live bait on the line because I'm a big wuss like that, and that's what we talk about. And then you got some agents that they need genuine help. Like, they need underwriting help more than anything else, or that agent they're just not comfortable in front of that client. And they want to know that they can call on you. Hey, put you on speaker. Matt, I'm with, Mrs. Jones here. You're on speaker. She has this condition, that condition. And you do that for a few times and then they're golden. And then they run with it. So, knowing your team, knowing your guys, what they need from you is super important.
Couldn't agree more. So real briefly, I did, and feel free to jump in and ask me any questions. But one thing I wanted to talk about was, like, clearly you've been very successful as an agent, but what a lot of people may or may not know about you is you're also, a great leader, and you've been a big part in a lot of big producers right now, helping them get out in the business. And you're the head of a really, really great organization. So what has that transition been like? What could you share just about somebody who's been a player, they've been a coach, they've been the leader. You know, you've done a big transition there. What's that look like?
Yeah. Well, I think it all started out with me being out there, and I was in the fire, as they say. You know, I was, you know, anybody that can come over to us knows I've been in their position, I've been in their shoes, and they can respect that. You know, I mean, you are absolutely doing amazing on the Medicare side. So when an agent comes in that's new to your organization and they want to know Medicare, they like to know that, you know, Kenny's been there, done that, and he's going to get me where I need to go. So I think that's kind of what started the things for me. The first agent I ever recruited, I wish I could take credit, but my wife actually recruited him. It was 8 years ago. The guy's Gatlin Traub, the one I was telling you about, been the number one agent for Trinity Family Benefit, you know, 3 out of the last 4 years. That's kind of what started it. I wish all agents were like him. Of course, we all know that's not the case. I got spoiled when I got him, and that's kind of what started things off, right? And then eventually, as time went on, you know, just attracting people that also were doing really well in the business. Hey, Matt, I did 200,000 last year. You know, I heard you did 500,000. You know, how can I? You know, you can teach me a couple things here and there. You know, and then that sparked, and then before you know it, you know, we have a lot of these really good agents, and everybody's goals are different too, Kenny. As you know, not everybody needs to be or wants to be a superstar, you know, so it goes back to what their goals are. What are your needs? What are your wants? Maybe they're barely making it, and they want to learn how to add Medicare to their arsenal. But I think what we've done here, Kenny, is, you know, we have so many good players at this organization now that these agents can tap into, and they know they can talk to me about final expense, and I'm going to tell them everything I know and give them the best advice that I can. They know that they can tap into you and do the same thing and ask you, Kenny, how did you make the transition from Medicare face to face, and now you're selling some over the phone? How'd you do that? You know, and I think before you know it, then what happens is the agents start talking to other agents, and they're bringing their friends over. You know, like, these guys, they have a lot of help, a lot of training, a lot of support. And by the way, they're pretty darn good at what they do too, because they're still out doing it sometimes, you know?
I think that's huge. I mean, that's really what attracted me to, you know, partnering up with you, is just the fact that there are a lot of people that because this business is all about relationships, whether we're talking about relationships with clients or strategic partners or whatever. And I've just been a part of a lot of organizations that there wasn't anyone that I could go look at and talk to and say, I want to do that. I want to do that and do it even better. But first I got to learn how he's doing or she's doing what they're doing. Right.
Right.
And so I think that's, you brought out a great point. You've got to have players on the team that people can emulate. And then not everybody wants to be a superstar, you know, right? Just like you mentioned. But some people are happy. They just want to know, hey, teach me the basics. I'm really an easygoing person. This is almost, maybe my spouse makes plenty of money. I just want to help people. And that's a great fit too. But for anybody that's just wandering around out there lost, they watch a couple of YouTube videos here and there, there's nothing more important than being able to get face-to-face or on the phone with somebody that's actually doing what you're aspiring to do, right? So
yeah,
that's just
and
huge.
then also being able to tap in, because it's hard to do this all yourself, right? So, you know, being at a place to where they know they can bring in a new agent and they're going to have the help as well. That's hugely important, knowing that, hey, this new agent I don't have to do it all myself. They can jump on this training call or this Zoom meeting here and learn a few things here and there. And it makes the agencies, you know, want to grow and be able to grow quicker that way. They don't have to do it all by themselves.
So what else, Matt? What do you got for me? Anything questions for me, or anything more you want to share about what you're doing or y'all's organization? I mean, it's wide open here.
No, I want to ask you a little bit about Medicare. So tell me a little bit real quick on the transition. So you started as a Medicare agent, but really you were a final expense agent. When did you start going full steam ahead with Medicare Advantage though, however? And, you know, what was it that you said, hey, I got to start going full steam ahead?
Yeah. So to kind of explain, we went in on Medicare. It was just the way we were taught. We didn't really know any better. But what was weird about it is I didn't even sell Medicare Advantage. I didn't even really understand it. I never did for 3.5 years. I didn't even look at it. But almost everyone I was getting in front of had Medicare Advantage. So I would just kind of skirt around that and say, oh, you're in a good spot, I guess. And then I would transition and build a relationship and try to offer final expense. And then maybe twice a week, I would get so lucky to get somebody that had like a Medicare Supplement Plan F. And so it's kind of funny because if I would have been getting in front of nothing but people with Medicare Supplement Plan F that were really expensive, cross-selling them and doing the final expense and the Medicare, I'd probably, be in a whole different spot right now. But I was going for that. But the leads we were working were leading us into majority Medicare Advantage clients. So think of all the business that was left on the table.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of brainwashing there where some of my trainers at that time just didn't want anything to do with Medicare Advantage. So here, my business partner and I were looking at what are we going to do? How are we going to take the next step, go to the next level? And, we just looked at what we were already doing and say, man, this is great. But what if every house we walked in, we had the opportunity to make a client there, even if they didn't want to buy final expense or wouldn't qualify. So we had a friend reach out just ironically called us and said, man, this AEP 2019, so this past year, you guys just get your AHIP one time. Just do it one time and tell me what happens. So kicking and screaming, got my AHIP, got a couple of the main carriers around here. And by the end of that AEP, and remember, we didn't have a business plan in place here, okay? We just kind of worked our book of business and whoever else we ran into. And I think Ethan and I each wrote somewhere around 60 or 70 clients that our very first AEP, really not knowing much of anything. The issue was we lost a lot because we had no training. We were like kind of just throw it against the wall, see if it sticks, like trying to follow the rules but as best as we knew them. And so here's where we ended up. The end of AEP, we were introduced to someone in your organization named Luis Moreno, who's an excellent Medicare guy. If you're looking to learn a lot about Medicare, he's a great guy to go to. So we knew the opportunity from just stumbling through it, but we knew we were kind of doing it wrong. Like we could be doing it better and maximizing this. So it was the perfect storm of we should have been doing this all along, kicking and screaming, we're giving it a try, stumbled through it for a few months, and then just ironically finally found some guys that we could look at and we're like, okay, you guys are great producers, but let me fine tune that and show you how to quit messing everything up or people rapid disenrolling because you didn't know what you don't know. And it was just the perfect storm. And so because of those relationships, it actually is now our number one focus, our number one business model is Medicare and specifically Medicare Advantage because of that. So I don't know if that was too long-winded.
Why Medicare Advantage? Is that your main focus? What does it do for you?
Number one, it's just the long-term renewal income that you're looking for, right? So I always tell people for every 50 policies that you write and keep, you're going to make $1,000 a month, a little bit more, but just call it $1,000 a month. So if you think about it like that, just 50, you can write 50 in a month. You don't have to, not everyone will, but that's not even crazy to do 50 in a month. You're going to work hard, but nothing crazy. And so that was super stimulating. Like when you write a big final expense policy, right? You're pumped because 3 days later, you might get a check for $1,500 and that feels nice. You could do that in 45 minutes, but it's a very short-term boost. When you know that each block of 50 Medicare Advantage clients is going to pay you $1,000 a month, potentially for the rest of that client's life. If that doesn't get you fired up, I don't know what will. And number two, really believe it or not, I don't care what anyone says, the Medicare Advantage market is underserved because even the agents that are out, first of all, most Medicare Advantage clients are buying from a call center, like an internal rep or something that doesn't even intimately know the plans in the area or take much time with them. They just kind of sell them on a couple of extra benefits, get it done and move on. They never hear from them again. So these folks are not, if you can, whether it's over the phone or in person, but if you can actually be a great independent advisor for them, you'll never lose that business. So you're really going to know intimately that you're putting them in the best plan, and that anybody that tried to come behind you would be putting them in a worse spot. They're not, you know what I mean? Like, you're really writing good business. I liked that. I like knowing that these folks don't always get taken care of the way we would want our grandparents taken care of. And if I can do that for them, I've got a client for life, not just a customer. Right. So,
and I also like how you break it down, because that's also sometimes people, their goals, they make them too long range and too big. Sometimes it's hard to imagine, okay, to get to 100,000, that's 400 clients. Well, that sounds, to some people, that sounds like a lot, like 400 clients. Oh, that seems like an eternity away. But if you break it down to like what you just said, hey, let's start with 50 clients is going to get you $1,000 in your pocket. Year in, year out, right? As long as that 50 is on your books. Then we add another 50. Now you're at, what is that? $2,000 a month. And you mentioned the 50. You're right. That's not a big number. In fact, our number one agent this week, or this month rather, in May, we're in the middle of a pandemic, once in a lifetime coronavirus, and he did 60.
Yep.
So 60 for the month of May. So these are numbers that you can do. Each of these guys, as long as they have the training, the support, the help, why not? Why not? We have people doing it here. Of course, Adam Hatter, we all know him. Doing big things like that too. So, lessen your goals. Make them attainable. And once you hit it,
well, just cut your goals into bite-sized pieces is what, doesn't mean you're not going for 1,000 or 10,000 clients. It just means, how can I look at this in a way that I can digest and get excited about and realistically focus on? And so that's why I started
your first 50.
Yep. Start with 50. Man, I want to cut this off here pretty shortly, just because I promised you I wouldn't run too long. We've been on about 35 minutes. Just first of all, thank you for coming on. I think it's always awesome. You're a very humble guy. It's a sigh of relief in this industry to have someone that's very open like you. Your nose isn't in the air just because you've killed it for several years. You love working with agents and taking the time to do stuff like this and hop on my measly little channel. So I appreciate that. Is there any closing thoughts or questions or anything else you have for me?
No, I like what you're doing, Kenny. It's impressive. I see the way you are starting to help these agents now, and we need more guys like you out there doing this. Getting the word out there. I know our partner, our other partner, David Duford's doing some pretty cool things, and we're all working together, and that's what makes this. The relationships in this business that we create over the years, people are going to watch this, Kenny, and they're going to see, guys like me and you working together, and our partner Dave, and our partner Adam, and our partner Ethan, and, all these people, we're all in it together. We're all here to help these agents. And I think what you're doing is pretty cool. And I'm just glad to be a part of it. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, of course, anytime. Guys, Matt Mungia, thank you again for being on. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. Medicare Millennials. Y'all have any suggestions for future interviews or videos, put them in the comments below. Thanks, Matt. We'll talk to you later.
All right. See you, buddy. Bye.